Photoshop has a number of tools to help us make selections in order to draw and paint and mask objects and make changes to isolated areas of the image. The most common selection tools are the Marquee tools and the Lasso tools, so we'll start with those. There are two different Marquee tools, the rectangular and the elliptical Marquee tool, and they both have the keyboard shortcut of M. We'll start with the rectangular Marquee tool, and I want to use this template to draw all four of the window panes. But instead of drawing each one individually, because then I would have to think about how I could align them perfectly, I'm going to start dragging out the first rectangle. And then I'm not going to stop here. I'm going to go all the way down to the bottom so that I'm selecting all four of the window panes at one time. Because with the rectangular Marquee tool, as well as the elliptical and all of the Lasso tools, there are options to add to, subtract from, or intersect your selection. So in this case, I want to subtract from the selection. So I'll choose the third icon here. You can see that my cursor now has a minus on it. And I will click and drag and basically select the areas that I want to remove from my selection. And this will ensure that the left and right-hand sides of these window panes are in alignment. Then I'll do the same thing here. I'll click and drag with the subtract from. So now I'm just left with these four window panes. In order to fill them with a color, I'll use the layer menu and choose New Fill Layer, Solid Color. I'll give it a name, Window, click OK, and then select a dark blue using the color picker. Now we'll hide this temporarily so that we can continue using the background layer as our template. All right, let's go ahead and switch to the elliptical Marquee tool. I want to drag out a circle. The thing you have to know with this is that as you're dragging, it's going to drag from the upper left-hand corner. So you have to imagine, for example, that there's a horizontal line going along the top of the moon and a vertical line going along the left side of the moon, so that when you click and start dragging out, it will drag from that top left-hand corner. Now, if you didn't get it positioned exactly correctly, don't worry, you can hold down the space bar as long as you haven't released your cursor in order to reposition the point of origin for any of your selections. Then just release the space bar and you can continue dragging out to make it larger or smaller. We can also hold down the Shift key if we want to constrain it to a circle, and the Shift key also works for the rectangular Marquee tool if you want to constrain it to a square. You can also drag the rectangular or the elliptical Marquee tools from the center if you hold down the Option key. So remember, I started dragging from right about here, so with the Option key down, it's actually dragging out from the center. But I don't want this in this case, so I'm going to release the Option key and just drag out a circle about the size of the moon. Now, if all those shortcuts were too much, don't worry. You can always use the Select menu and choose Transform Selection. And as you transform the selection, it's only transforming the marching ants. It's not going to transform the actual pixels underneath it. All right, I'll apply that transformation. And then instead of using the Layers menu to add a fill layer, I'm going to use the Adjustment layer icon and add a solid color fill layer. I'm going to fill it with white and click OK. But that gives us a full moon, and it also deselects my selection because it's turned the selection into a mask. But I can always load that selection again, either by choosing Select and then Reselect, or by command clicking or control clicking on Windows on the mask itself. Once I have the selection, I can position my cursor within the marching ants and just reposition it because I want to cut this area out of the full moon so that I'm left with the crescent. In order to do this, I need to look at my mask. Where the moon is visible, the mask is white. So I just need to fill that with black, which I can do so by going Edit and Fill and filling this with black. All right, I'll deselect by using Command D or Control D. And now let's switch to the Lasso tools. I'll select the polygonal lasso tool and just zoom in a little bit and use the spacebar in order to reposition the tree in the image area. Now, the way this tool works is that all I need to do is click every time I want to change directions. So it's a very easy tool to use. It's going to draw a straight line between each one of my clicks. So just a few more here, and I will be all the way around the tree. When I get to the starting point, I get the little icon of the circle that tells me I'm going to close that selection. From the bottom of the layers panel, I'll add another solid color fill layer. I'll get a dark green color for that tree and click OK. Then we'll scoot over and I'm going to switch from the polygonal lasso tool to just the regular lasso tool. And here I'm going to draw a free form shape around the shoulders. This doesn't have to be exact, but you'll notice that I started on the lower left, and that's because when I get to the lower right now, I can just release my cursor and Photoshop will automatically close that selection. Then we'll add another solid color fill layer. In this case, I want it to be a little bit darker blue than we had for the windows, and click OK. I'll hide that layer so that we can see the hair. And in this instance, I want to switch to the magnetic lasso tool. Now, the great thing about the magnetic lasso tool is that it's going to try to trace an object. So it's looking for edges. And when it finds an edge, it's just going to trace along there and it's going to set down all of these points. Now, sometimes it can go astray, in which case you can actually click to set down points and kind of override where it's drawing. And the other thing that you can do, if it ever gets away from you and like starts laying down points somewhere you don't want it to, just tap the delete key and start moving your cursor back to those areas where you don't want the points. And every time you tap the delete key, it will delete one of the points. All right, so let's just continue along here, dragging down, and then let's bring it all the way back up and around the top of her head. I'll close the path. That will make a selection. Now we'll add another fill layer, solid color, and I might just make this a little bit brown and click OK. And I'll zoom out using Command 0. All right, let's show the window as well as the figure right here. That was color fill number 3. And if we needed to, we could turn off the template. Of course, that gives us our transparency. So we'll add one more solid color. We'll make it kind of a darker gray, and then just reposition it on the layers panel by dragging it down in the stacking order. So as you can see, the Marquee tools are great for selecting your geometric shapes, and the Lasso tools are great for your more freeform shapes. And of course, you can use any of these tools in combination with one another to make more complex shapes.